I suppose every year when the Super Bowl comes up, it's kind of a fun moment for you to look back. What do you remember about that? It's been a little while now, but being a Super Bowl champion still has a pretty sweet ring to it.
Yes, it has. It's exactly 50 years ago. Well, not exactly. It was January 11th, 1970. So that's 50 years ago, and this is the first time the Chiefs have been in the game since that time. So the Chiefs Kingdom, that call it around here, is pretty goddamn excited. So if you have a heck of a football team, they're playing a heck of a football team. Should be a great Super Bowl, but of course, who I hope is going to win, and I think they have an excellent chance.
Yeah, absolutely. What has it been like around that Kansas City area over the past few years, even when they've been knocking on the door? It's got to be pretty sweet. Do you go to any of those games? Has it been fun to watch from home, wherever?
No, it has been fun. Of course, I came to Kansas City from Bozeman in spring of 1967. Lived here for a long time, and then I went to Colorado for a while, a couple of years up in Bozeman as well, but been back here for quite a few years, and the Chiefs take care of us pretty well. I've got good, tickets to the game, of course, the club section, and some of the suites as often as I want to go to them, and good parking, so we enjoy going. It's Arrowhead is a fabulous stadium, football stadium, and a lot of excitement. So we go to almost half of the home games anyway.
You've got that Chiefs connection. Flip it around on the other team. We've got the Montana State connection with Mike Person. We don't see many of our Montana State or University of Montana former players playing in a Super Bowl, and especially the ones that were born in the state of Montana. How cool is it to see another Bobcat playing on the big stage?
Well, I hear it's very exciting. I got a call from somebody the other day I think there are, I believe he said it was 6 of us from Montana State that had played in the Super Bowl. Obviously, I believe I was the first since that was Super Bowl 50 years ago. But I heard a lot of good things about Mike Person. He is from Glendive, Montana. We had teammates from Glendive. I think Don Hass was from Glendive. Bob Senden was from Glendive. Of course, Jerry Jimison, the mayor up there, was a teammate of mine in Glendive. So I think it's pretty goddamn special, pretty neat that a kid from there and then go to Montana State and play in the big game for the 49ers. It's great to hear that.
If you had any advice for him, being a smaller school, quote-unquote, guy from a Montana State, what would that advice to somebody like that? Because it's a pretty eye-opening stage.
Well, I'm sure it's been given advice all week long. What everybody tells you is try to keep the distractions to a minimum. Try to do your normal routine, because you're going to hear from, friends and also people you haven't heard from in years. And then there's a ticket situation. And there's so many things, and also the media. Of course, I think there are about 5,000 or 6,000 people in Miami with media credentials. So you get tugged from every direction. So everybody will tell you, make it as normal as possible, which is not easy to do, but to stick into your routine and try to not get involved in much of the hoopla. That's the key.
50 years ago, were people hitting you up for tickets? Was it as big of a deal then?
Well, it was a big deal. By that time, the Chiefs played in Super Bowl I as well, and the Packers beat them, and the Packers won Super Bowl II, and then the third Super Bowl was when the Jets beat Baltimore, and Baltimore was favored by 18 points. And when we got to Super Bowl IV, it was finally called the Super Bowl, and the Minnesota Vikings, of opponents, they were 13 to 14 points underdogs, mainly because of the NFL versus the AFL. And at that time, it had become the biggest sporting event in America. There were 80,000 people at the Tulane Stadium. It was in New Orleans, and of course the Superdome was built about 5 years later. Now, I know that reports I've been reading after that, 70 million people watched that game on television in America. Now, keep in mind there were 225 million people that living here then. Now it's 325 million people. So believe it or not, the percentage in this country viewing that television that day, viewing that game, was similar to what it is today. So by that time, it had become the biggest sporting event, one-day sporting event in America now. Today, with all the cable news and all the other stuff, it is almost mind-boggling what it is. But at that time, we knew what was at stake in that particular game. It's for the championship in professional football. And it was a really big deal.
How do you take in the Super Bowl these days? Sitting at home on the couch with a nice big spread of food in the kitchen, or do you go somewhere else and have a little party? Or
Well, I didn't go for many, many years. And then in the late 80s, I retired in 1985. Late 80s, I was asked by Norwegian television to make a little commentary for 3 or 4 years at the game. And then in 1991, I was elected to the Hall of Fame. And from then on, I got quite a few times because, to be perfectly honest with you, you get paid for going. You get paid for attending certain lunches and dinner and autograph shows, and they fly you down there. So it's pretty fortunate. And this year is really the best deal ever because I was fortunate enough to be picked to the 100-year team. The NFL is 100 years old this year, and we're guests of the league. So they are bringing myself and our spouses down to the game on Thursday. We're going to go to several functions, the commissioner party and the honor show party, and also be in guest and sitting in the suite during the game to watch the game and have a little bit of introductions during the game on that particular day. So this is pretty sweet. And the neatest thing about it is that the Chiefs are playing in the game. So this will be we're really looking forward to it.
I mean, it couldn't be more perfect timing, could it, to have the Chiefs end this 100th year anniversary all-time team stuff?
No, it works out just exactly right. Couldn't be more happy.
Does it ever seem like a dream? I mean, you look at a Super Bowl champion, Pro Bowls, All-Stars, the 100th year anniversary, your numbers retired, you're in a couple teams' Hall of Fames. I mean, does it ever just seem like a dream? You have to pinch yourself?
Well, I came from Montana State, from Norway on a ski scholarship. We actually had ski jumping in the NCAA competition in those days, and I did that cross country. And then, of course, my summer sport had been soccer, so I started just messing around, kicking the football my junior year with a kicker on the team, Dale Jackson from Great Falls, and the word got out. Roger Kraft saw me, the basketball coach, and he informed Coach Jim Sweeney, and Sweeney took a chance on me, and it was kind of remarkable. That was in fall of 1964, and a couple of years later, I'm in pro football. So it was a pretty unscripted journey. It was totally unexpected, and I guess it is pretty remarkable what has happened. I was told about the land of opportunity, but this was probably beyond the dreams that one could possibly have.
That was going to be my next question, actually, because if you're not down there just messing around, kicking the football, none of this happens. I mean, you want to talk about just being in the right place at the right time. It doesn't get much more the definitive of that.
No, this was because, and the reason this was totally by happenstance. Now, years later, and I was the fourth kicker to kick what we call soccer style in the NFL, in the pro football. Years later, if a guy came from South America, from Europe, and he was an exchange student maybe at the high school, they'd probably ask him if he played soccer. Maybe he could try out for the kicker on the team. But in my case, that happened after myself had gotten into the league and the word got around what happened. But my story was, I suppose, that added to that, asking some of the younger kids that followed me from other parts of the world to try. But in my case, it was very fortunate, and I cannot thank Jim Sweeney enough for giving me the chance and believing in and doing that. He didn't have to. It was kind of a sideshow. It was kind of a circus at the time. And so the Roger Kraft talking to him, and then, of course, it was Jim that made it all possible. So I will always be very grateful and thankful for Jim Sweeney. Of course, he was one of the most dominant persons I've ever met. He was a great, great football coach, and I think about him a lot.
What is it that you miss about?
And also, I would say too, the teammates that we had, they welcomed me on the team in those days. My first year, my senior year, was in 1965, and I remember, most of the names, of course, and we beat the Grizzlies that year. I remember 24-7, and it was a big deal. It was just a great experience to be on an American college campus and experience. Most of Europe, you have club sports. You compete in your local clubs, ski clubs or speed skating clubs or soccer clubs. You don't compete from school to school. So that whole experience was just phenomenal.
What do you remember? I mean, when you sit back, do you keep in touch with any of those former teammates? You mention all their names and stuff. Do you ever get a chance to just
Well,
shoot the breeze?
I stay a lot with a lot of them because Gary Richards from Billings is probably the one I stay in closest contact with. He was a tight end. He actually played quarterback a few times that year, and I actually was the starting quarterback when they beat the Grizzlies. Dennis Erickson was the team the following year. Marv Tiller was the one that held the ball for me. He was Joe Tiller's younger brother. Terry Albrecht from Great Falls. We had Don Haas. We had Jerry Jimison from Glendive, the mayor of Glendive, not for a long time. And the list goes on and on. Jim Tuss, there was Dan Duff. God, I hate to leave anybody out. There was so many. Ron East was on that team. Played for many years in the NFL. And Wayne Purdom. Gosh, Jim Tuss. There were so many people that did great things. And they welcomed me with open arms. John Jernberg, I remember. Steve Rundle. There were so many. I see them, quite often when I go back up to the Bobcat games.
I was going to ask, how often do you get to come back, and how much do you pay attention?
I get back there, almost once a year.
Okay.
Almost once a year.
And
Bozeman is one of my favorite places in the entire world. It's a beautiful town that brings back great memories, and it's a pretty town with skiing and mountains, of course. That's part of the skiing life. And actually, I'm going up there for the NCAA ski championship in middle of March, in a month and a half or so.
I was just going to say that they're getting to host that out at Bridger Bowl, so that's kind of the perfect tie-in as well to come back.
Absolutely.
How
Looking forward to that.
How close is skiing in Montana to skiing in Norway? I don't feel like it would be very close.
Well, when I grew up, everybody cross-country skied. All the kids in school were in ski jumping. Now, that has changed. I go back there quite often, too. The ski jumping hills in my hometown, I think it was only 3,000-4,000 people. We had over 20 ski jumping hills. And the 2 or 3 of them, we could light up in the evening after supper so we could go there and practice in the evening. It was totally lit up like a well-lit-up football stadium here. But now, from what I hear, they develop ski. The masses do not ski jump anymore. They do a lot of cross-country skiing. So now the ski jumpers there, they develop like the professional tennis players or golfers even here. They go to certain camps and develop them from a young age. So the masses are not involved in jumping, but are here in cross-country, and they do quite a bit in alpine skiing. They've gotten very good at that in that as well. Of course, alpine is, with the slalom and the downhill, of course. And by the way, downhill, I believe, is even a tougher sport than ski jumping was.
Crazy. Okay. Do you still try to serve as an ambassador for both sports, trying to make sure that the youth are coming up and learning about it and keeping both going, football and skiing?
Well, I'm living in Kansas City, so I don't have much part of that at all.
It's tough to do out there for skiing.
Oh, it's pretty flat, and there's not much snow either. So.
We know who you're rooting for. Tell me what you think's going to happen on Sunday.
Well, my heart tells me, and even my head, I guess, the Chiefs will win. I say 31-17.
31-17. It's kind of the contrasting styles here, where Mahomes and the Chiefs road show, but then you've got these 49ers that are playing that gritty old school style football. Is that more the kind of football you guys were playing back in the day?
Well, the game has changed quite a bit. It was every rule change that they made for 50 years is to enhance the passing games, to make it easier to throw the ball, I suppose. It's become very much the quarterback game. But still, in the big games, defense is a key role. We know that the defense of the 49ers is maybe the best in all of football.
The final question I got to ask: if the Chiefs had somebody go down at kicker, could you step in and still boot one through in the moment this weekend?
I will stay warm during the game just in case.